Well, Hillary and Bernie came to town, and all we got was a debate. Have we city dwellers simply reached paradise and freed up our leaders to focus on solutions for rural Americans? Or maybe we're just too busy to play politics. Whatever the reason, the leading contenders for President of the United States seem to have placed urban issues on the back burner. From air quality to crumbling infrastructure, rapid transit, and housing, we have issues, but we also have three talented journalists to help us wade through some of the issues that we'd like our commander-in-chief to prioritize. Ruth Brown is the deputy director at the Brooklyn paper. Welcome to BK Live. We're also happy to have Samar Kurshid, who is Gotham Gazette's city government reporter. Hey, you. And also from the Brooklyn paper is a reporter, Lauren Gill. Thanks all for being here. So before we go forward, I want to sort of rewind a little bit and look at the Obama administration. He's got the AG there now. He stole Loretta from us. He's got a lot of Brooklynites. He got a Supreme from New York City. So there's a lot of urban people who've been added and brought up to that national prominence from his administration. How did Obama do on the sort of urban angle?
I mean, I think he has been a president that's been quite engaged with that. And, if you speak to people, I mean, we're coming into almost the honeymoon period now where you speak to people and they go, oh, it was great. They tend to perhaps forget about that. But I do think he has been a fairly in-touch president that I think most people would agree with that in Brooklyn, yeah. Yeah,
so how did you think Obama did with the urban stuff? We're still not as far as we should be.
Well, I mean, I'm not like a crazy expert on this, but Obama, I think what his values and his policies, some of those reflect with the people in Brooklyn, in New York. He reflects them. They see him as one of them. Sorry. Yeah. So I guess that's why his approval rating's gone up. I'm not sure he's been very effective in passing urban policies as he could have been. The highway bill took a really long time. It took a lot of pushing from city administrations, from mayors. Mayor de Blasio made that a big issue. So it's not just President Obama, it's the federal government in general has disinvested in New York for a very long time. New York is a donor state, that's the word they use. We gave $214 billion in taxes to the federal government in 2014 or 15, I believe. That's according to the state comptroller. And we received nearly $20 billion less than that. Right. So federal disinvestment has been going on for a long time, and it's widening. Yeah. And experts agree that that's something that the government, not just President Obama, but any president coming after him, needs to address.
So, Lauren, you've been on the streets. When Brooklyn was Obama country the first time, everyone went wild, and to some extent the second time that he made it to the White House as well. But do you think Brooklynites generally see this as a disconnect? Like the president has an agenda, but again, it's like the federal people and the government and the Congress. Do you think they blame the president, or just the government is ignoring us?
I think they see more so the government as ignoring them. I was speaking to people when I was down at the rallies, and they were saying, Bernie is such a big rock star, but they're saying Obama is the ultimate rock star, and you could really tell that, they still really like him, really look up to him, and think, he's doing what they've asked him to do.
So what are the urban issues as you see them? What are all of the questions that Errol Lewis didn't get to engage in when CNN came to town?
I mean, I think housing is the obvious one. That's what you were hearing when you spoke to people. They were like, I think people very much expected that to come up. Now, full credit to Errol Lewis. I don't know what questions he submitted, and CNN said no way on. They might have felt like there were questions that weren't relevant to a national audience, or maybe he just didn't ask them. So I think that was the big one that obviously is what New Yorkers, Brooklynites are talking about constantly. Certainly all of our local politicians are talking about constantly, and hoped they would bring it up. Now, I don't know if, and I think this speaks to a lot of local issues, I don't know if a lot of Brooklynites, a lot of New Yorkers necessarily expect the federal government to impact those things a lot, or to actually be the ones making the changes. I think, especially here, people really, people are very engaged, and they look to their council people. They look to the state but especially they look to city government to make these changes.
Yeah.
At the same time, I do think people were hoping a bit of lip service maybe from the candidates on the issue of housing.
This was meant to be. It was like the urban debate. And in a nation where we are the only mega city of 10 million plus in the entire of America, Mexico City's the other one in North America, but we're the mega city and we couldn't really get any issues into the thing that were specifically urban. So what does that mean for us as a donor state? People come here, they get their money, and they fly to Iowa and talk about ethanol for 6 months.
Well, actually, as Errol Lewis pointed out, and he did a podcast a day or two before the debate.
I have a great quote from him when you.
And he pointed out these are national issues. National issues are local issues. Issues like infrastructure, terror funding, especially counter-terror funding, which has become an issue since President Obama proposed those cuts.
Yeah.
Transit infrastructure and coastal resiliency, particularly in New York. A lot of these issues have been talked about in the presidential campaign, but not specifically about how it relates to cities. They're all, like when you talk about criminal justice, and Errol Lewis pointed this out, you're talking about racial justice, mass incarceration. When you narrow into New York, you've got Rikers Island. There's the push to close Rikers Island. There's the following the cases like when Eric Garner's death happened. Racial justice has been an issue here. It's been a prominent issue here in the last couple of years. So these are all national issues which, when you sort of narrow them down, are also local issues. Yeah. They just don't get the same sort of attention from an urban angle as they should.
Yeah, because I guess if you're running for president, you're not running for president of New York City. But in the reality of the thing is to say New Yorkers don't really show up at the polls as much. During the primary, there were less than 2 million votes cast. How do we get our voice out there, do you think, to make these issues prominent if we're not even sort of voting in the numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they had to go ahead and, as he was saying, that the candidates wanted to talk about big issues. They wanted to appeal to more of a national audience, and that's when I spoke to actually someone after the debate, a politician. He said, I understand they didn't really talk about issues specific to Brooklyn, but, they are relevant because they are on a national scale.
So do you think we gave him too much of a pass, Ruth? If, like, de Blasio has been largely neutered when he shows up late to endorse Hillary anyway, and Brad Lander and a few others made a concerted effort to push urban issues to the front, but they weren't really there. We got a tour of public housing with Richie Torres by Bernie and Hillary, but how is New York City faring on the larger landscape?
Well, do I think we gave the candidates a pass? I mean, not necessarily, because it's several weeks later and we're still holding them to account on important television shows.
Yeah.
So, it was definitely something that was talked about. Will it impact people's votes? I don't know. I mean, as you say, like, the primary turnout was not amazing. I think, if it's going to be a Trump Hillary or who knows, a Trump-Bernie situation, I do think you will see a fairly solid turnout regardless of the local issues. I do think also that, to the credit of the debate of the moderators, there were issues of criminal justice and there were issues of gun violence, and those were discussed quite at length, not just at the debate, but also at the rallies, also in the press. And they might not necessarily be the issues that all New Yorkers and Brooklynites, talk and think about, luckily for them. But they certainly, and especially perhaps the loudest ones, and the ones in the media, but I do think they are issues for, a lot of Brooklynites. And so for them, they probably, a lot of people did hear, discussion of issues that are, at the forefront of their lives and their minds.
Well, on the other side, the people who didn't debate here, Ted Cruz put New York in the headlines more than anyone else with his New York values kind of comments. But I'm going to ask the most unfair question to you, Lauren, now and say, what would a Trump-Christie administration mean for New York City and other urban areas like it? They're the city guys. You got Mr. Real Estate and Mr. Bridgegate as the people who are running the country. What do you think that would mean for urban environments?
I think it would mean a lot of positive benefits for the very rich. There would be a lot of development. There's a lot of development issues going on in Brooklyn, gentrification, people saying, there's too many towers going up. They're fighting against it. We don't want these towers in our neighborhood. And I think, if Trump were president, he would find a way to go ahead and, build these towers and gentrify Brooklyn even more than it is already.
So one of the big criticisms of Obama was that a lot of people expected him and then alternately say he's not the black president. He's the president of America. So people think he might have hedged some of the stuff for people of color or race relations and sending lots of people, deporting them. So do you think that Trump and Christie, if that is the ticket, could sort of be held to the same standards? We expect them to be urban presidents, but they really have to show America, all of the flyover states, that we're here for you too?
Well, I mean, right at the outset, a Trump-Christie presidency could be very, very problematic for this country. I'm a Muslim, and I'm not from this country. I'm not a citizen either.
Yeah.
So I'm the person that Trump wants to ban from entering this country. And I think policies like that distract from real issues. And bear in mind, President Obama was, he was sort of hobbled by the Republicans in the House and in Congress. If there's a Trump-Christie presidency, I doubt that they'd have that same majority going in. I don't think the people in this country would allow Congress to be dominated by Republicans, particularly if they're being led by Trump and Christie.
Yeah. Well, on her website, Hillary Clinton has this economic revitalization plan, and she talks about putting money into cities and investing in housing near schools and transportation. And Bernie Sanders famously has his Fight for 15, like he's been out front on raising the minimum wage. But who do you think has the sort of urban street cred? If we look at those three, we're like a heartbeat away from a president who, like Bernie, has some legit Brooklyn roots. Hillary is a carpetbagger in some way. Her husband's in Harlem. She's over here. Trump is a Queens boy. But who really has the street cred that you think would translate into making things better in urban areas?
I mean, if we're just talking about street cred, it's all in the eye of the beholder. And I'd credit to both the Sanders campaign and the Clinton campaign. They both did a pretty admirable job of convincing New York and Brooklynites that these two people were sort of relevant locals, despite many good reasons that they weren't. I mean, Sanders left a long time ago. He didn't even know how to ride the subway anymore.
Yeah, Manhattan didn't even go for Trump, though. If we think about it, people in Manhattan were smart enough to not pull the lever for that guy.
Yeah. So I mean, I think people generally felt. I think Sanders certainly won over a lot more of the, clearly the young demographic and that area. But we went to a lot of churches, a lot of the Caribbean community where Hillary and Bill, and I think Chelsea also were turning out, and a lot of people in those communities, a lot of the older black community really did feel like that they were, that Bill had been a fantastic president for them and was very in touch with what was going on in their communities, and they definitely felt like Clinton would, continue on that legacy or perhaps revitalize that. So, in the eyes of that community, absolutely, Clinton was the one who was on the ball. So, I mean, look, it's all in the eye of the beholder who has the credibility.
So, Lauren, I know that you're also in the street a lot, and you talk to a lot of people after the debate. I want to bring back a number that you talked about earlier, that we did pay $214 billion in federal taxes and saw just under $20 billion less come back to the state. Looking at all of our issues, immigration, infrastructure, mass incarceration, rapid transit, even hell, transgender bathroom access right now. I wonder, from your vantage, where do you think Brooklynites would like to see those funds and that focus go among those or other issues?
They would definitely like to see it go back into housing, infrastructure. I know with some of the NYCHA houses now, they're going to have to build on the land to raise money for the capital.
Process.
Next generation neighborhoods. They'd like to see money go back into there so they can improve the public housing. Interestingly enough, at the Bernie Sanders rally, people really cheered a lot for decriminalization of marijuana. So war on drugs was a big issue that Brooklynites cared a lot about.
I guess
and New York's on track to, they're making inroads into sort of cutting down the penalties for marijuana possession.
All right. So just before we get out of here, I wonder, just looking at the cabinet, though, do you think we're going to see, depending on who's in, more people like Loretta Lynch ascending and people who've made it to the national level from New York as sort of policy folks instead of maybe an urban president? We'll get some of those cabinet positions.
That's hard I mean, that's hard to predict. I mean, depending on if it's Bernie, depending on who's in office. I'm sure on the Democratic side, you can expect a lot of, diverse, smart intellectuals and people, hopefully from New York, who will have a say in policy rather than just, in the other branches of government.
All right. Well,
hopefully.
That's going to be the last words. Donor state no more. New York is coming to influence the national political scene. Thank you all for being here. We'll keep reading the Brooklyn paper and the Gotham Gazette to stay abreast of these things.